It's election time in many states, maybe not many, about 3 or 4.
Yeah.
It's not midterm election, and obviously, it's not a presidential election, but it is time for governor elections in 3 states. It's Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Virginia. All eyes are on Virginia right now because Virginia voted Democrat in the presidential election. In fact, it handed the president that state by 10 points.
Say by landslide.
Yes. It normally does lean Democratic by and large. But now there's a governor race that is up for grabs. And it is at this point too close to call. And it is leaning Republican. Now, this is surprising because Democrats are in power, because Virginia is usually so blue. And it just was unexpected. Now, 538 blog, which is what you're looking at right here, which is giving us its prediction, says this is thanks to an unpopular Democratic president in the White House. So obviously we've talked about lately Biden's approval ratings are going down. I think that hinged on the exit from Afghanistan and now the economy and the fact that certain supply chains are just not running smoothly. And it does seem now that this candidate Youngkin, sorry.
Youngkin.
Like pumpkin,
Right.
but Youngkin is in fact going to pull ahead. And this, we don't want to be hyperbolic about it, but we will say that it doesn't bode well for the president. And it seems like when next year's midterms come around, the bloom will be off the rose for the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it already is. If you look at the poll numbers this morning for President Biden right now is at Trump level poll numbers right now. Lowest of his presidency at 42%. That's very, very low. He's got an economy that is shrinking, has enormous problems. So when you look at this Youngkin-McAuliffe number right now, again, Biden wins it by 10 points. And in that amount of time, we have a race this tight right now. And by the way, if this goes the way of Republicans in Virginia, that is a absolute disaster for Democrats. That is a huge, huge disaster for Democrats. Chuck Todd this weekend had an analysis of the new poll that just came out yesterday, the new NBC poll, and on Meet the Press. Take a look at his breakdown of these new President Biden poll numbers.
See news poll out this morning that's filled with some scary news for the Democrats. The overarching message: Americans have lost their confidence in President Biden and their optimism for the country. At least they have right now. Just 22% of adults say we're headed in the right direction. A shocking 71% say we're on the wrong track, and that includes a near majority of Democrats who are saying that. President Biden's approval rating stands at a dismal 42% versus 54% who disapprove. Believe it or not, just 2 months ago, Mr. Biden was in positive territory, 49% approving, 48% disapproving. So what's pulling down the president's numbers? Well, look at this set of numbers. Just 37% say he has the ability right now to handle a crisis versus nearly a majority who say he does not. 37% also say he's competent and effective as president. 50% disagree with that description. What's more, Republicans, believe it or not, have double-digit leads in dealing with border security, inflation, crime, national security, the economy, and shockingly, on getting things done. Democrats hold generally
very
smaller
arbitrary,
double-digit
isn't it?
leads
Right.
on dealing with climate change, the coronavirus, education, and abortion. And that's really it right now. It's not clear yet whether any deal struck by Democrats on the social spending and infrastructure bills will nudge Mr. Biden's numbers back into positive territory, or whether the damage to his reputation is more of a scar than a bruise. But this much is clear. About the only good news for Mr. Biden and the Democrats in this poll is that the midterm elections aren't for another year.
Okay, I misspoke
Wow.
about Pennsylvania. It's local and judge elections. It is not governor race.
Right. It's not gubernatorial.
We are Pennsylvania voters, and so I got excited because it is time for us to vote.
Yes.
We have our ballots.
But this Biden agenda that he talks about, that could be the thing that ends up in some ways maybe saving him if this can pass. And there's no clear sign yet, no clear path to this getting done. He was asked yesterday at the G20, was President Biden, as to whether or not he believes that he's going to have an infrastructure bill when he gets back from this trip. Mm-hmm. And he said, I believe we will have it this week. I'm confident that we will have this thing signed, sealed, and delivered basically by the end of the week. Mm-hmm. He said, a lot of you were saying it's not going to happen. And he said, look, it might still not happen. That was his reassuring. And he said, but I'm pretty confident that this is going to be done probably by the end of the week. a stimulus package.
Are you?
No.
Me neither.
Because there's so many things to iron out. I mean, come on.
Well, and the thing is, like, it doesn't matter. Like, they say, oh, this is going to be bad for the Democrats. Is it really? No. Either way, it's bad for us. So it doesn't really matter if it's bad for them because, like, give me one campaign promise that he's actually kept. You know, like, I think it's funny that people still defend him, like Snarky for Life is saying Biden is still scraping all the gum off the tables that Trump left. He isn't a magician and can't fix everything overnight. That would be like trying to clean up a frat house after a party in 5 minutes. But the thing is, he has not done one single thing that he promised. He could do so much with executive order. This has nothing to do with Trump. And people keep giving these people justifications for these actions when they don't deserve it.
Yeah, you've had 11 months now, right? So 11 months of a presidency.
No.
Yeah, January.
Well, 10 months. Okay.
Well, today's November 1st. So, all right, 10 and a half months, 10 months. And I agree. Look, you can't undo a lot of things that are put in place by a former president. So I will give Snarky for Life some.
Well, he spent a lot of money. He spent a lot of money for stimulus packages, even for people who may not necessarily have needed them.
Well, what I'm saying is, yes, okay, so stimulus packages, there are a few passed. But they weren't even as big as the ones that President Trump passed. He has the power of the executive office and the power of the presidency to Elizabeth Warren calling for $50,000 student loan debt reduction. Right. Chuck Schumer calling for $50,000. He could get out there and say, with a stroke of a pen, I'm going to make a significant change in the United States.
Well, that's the point. Most of what he campaigned on, he could have done with executive action. Most of what he campaigned on, the student loan debt. Yeah.
But it's interesting when you think about how the American people responds to like direct checks in the same way they did with the President Bush stimulus checks, right? You send checks out, you raise your popularity. It's really as simple as that. And Tom Wheelwright makes the point from the Wealthability podcast that he gave stimulus to people who didn't necessarily need stimulus. He just handed it all out to make sure that he could get voted in, right? So he spent a lot of money. Arguably money that didn't even need to be spent. But then when it comes to these pieces that are like investment type spending, he's not willing.
Oh, well, I disagree with it because what he actually did was, if you're talking about being inaugurated, he wasn't even yet inaugurated.
But he had announced the stimulus plan right before the election. And it was an arm wrestling competition between Trump said this and Biden said this. And who won?
Well, in December, of course, Trump, so he was still president-elect. Trump passed that stimulus bill right before Christmas, right? And then you had the Georgia runoff election where Biden promises $2,000 stimulus checks if you vote for these guys. And then that didn't happen. So we're going to get checks out next week if you vote for these guys in the Georgia runoff.
Which he couldn't even do. It wasn't even possible.
It was not even possible for them to get this out. I mean, because we saw how long it takes the IRS to get stuff out in the first place. So infrastructure-wise.
But he wasn't in power during the Georgia election. So he wouldn't have been able to, right?
So people bought into this idea, right? My point is that there's been a lot of missed opportunities here for this president.
But a lot of spending, I guess, is my point. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. Yes, there's a lot of things that haven't been done, but there's still been a ton of spending on things we don't necessarily need.
Right, and a lot of it goes to big businesses.
Right.
Like an 85 car Escort.
Yeah, an 85 car, vehicle, whatever you call it, motorcade, 85 vehicles that you and I are paying for.
I would like to know what it cost, because did we ship those vehicles over somehow, did we?
Yeah. I mean, well, we have, I don't know. I know the Beast, the Beast that is the main presidential car, the one that's the bulletproof one. And
Zoom into the license plate.
I don't know.
It's not a Democratic plate. No, that's an American plate. Because the Democrats, or the not Democratic plate, the bureaucratic plates have red writing on them.
In Europe?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are American shipped cars. Like, we shipped these cars to Rome so that President Biden could ride around Rome. 85 of these cars.
I mean, I understand you can't maybe secure a president in a car that's rented.
Right. You can't go to Hertz
and get for Joe Biden.
Can we have do you guys have one of your bulletproof cars? Joe needs a bulletproof car.
It's like going there when you need a car
this
seat.
Weekend.
And they're like, we don't have it. How many times have we done that? Tried to go somewhere and they don't have the right size car seat for your kids. That's why we travel.
Yeah, couldn't they have borrowed the Pope mobile?
I mean, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Pope could have let him in trouble. So President Biden in trouble, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the Virginia in the gubernatorial race. Can Terry McAuliffe withstand this Republican attack from Youngkin? You know, and there's no mention also from Youngkin of he was a Wall Street guy. He's worth like hundreds of millions of dollars. No mention of that.
No.
The Democrats aren't attacking him on that issue at all. You know why? Because Terry McAuliffe is also a multimillionaire. So they can't use that argument. So there's like two millionaires going against each other.
Yeah.
He can't be the populist every guy. And they can't play the Wall Street card with Youngkin. So they're leaving that out of the whole thing. You know, they're just saying he's a Trump guy. So anyway, Biden in trouble. We'll talk about more as we keep an eye on that over the next few days. We'll have the results, by the way, on Wednesday. For these races.
Exactly.
On
We
the
should.
show.